Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine 18 Tarot and Books. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. In this video, I wanted to share a look at a deck that I brought into my collection late last year, but haven't gotten the chance to really share yet. This is the Eco Tarot by Adrienne Zenek. I hope I'm pronouncing their name correctly. You can see their name here. I found this deck by accident, stumbling around the internet as one does, reading about and looking for ecologically conscious, environmentalist inclined tarot and oracle decks. And this just happened to come up. And I hadn't seen it before, and I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but I really liked the sounds of the project. So I messaged the creator to ask if I could order a copy, even though the website only shipped to the United States, and they made that happen for me. Much thank yous for that, and the deck arrived. So this deck originates, as I understand it, in a handmade set of cards that the creator had made out of handmade paper, made out of recycled materials, cotton, linen, agave, and natural pigments. It then was also a set of kind of performance art pieces with the artist performing over 1,300 climate-focused readings in different public venues. And their website talks about giving readings in the United States and a number of different places in Finland and Chile. And now the cards exist in this form, which one can acquire and work with. So, very cool. And I thought I would share it with you. So, it comes in this two-piece box. The inside of the box is plain. It comes with a guidebook like this. It's in black and white. The font is small but readable, and I'm a glasses wearer and it's readable for me. The artist did send me, when I ordered this, a updated version of this in PDF form. It appears to be very similar to this original. I haven't gone through and kind of identified what exactly the updates are, but it came as a PDF. And something that I really, noticed right away when I got this was that at the end of the book, there's a selected references page, which I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see, but the selected references include authors like Octavia Butler, Donna Haraway, Joy Harjo, Robin Wall Kimmerer, Gertrude Mortimer Sandilands, Arundhati Roy, Vandana Shiva, names that I'm sure many viewers will recognize. And, this, I love this. You all know I love a bibliography. I have a theory background. I'm a sci-fi enthusiast. There's just a lot about this that I quite like, and that list of references really caught my eye. And I guess I'll just mention before I get to the cards, since I'm talking about the book. The guidebook includes an introduction from the artist, kind of explaining the project. It includes a couple of spreads. I will share one at the end, and they're original spreads. And then it includes keywords upright and reversed for each of the cards. Many of the major arcana are renamed. The guidebook does tell you which are which. They're also numbered, so if you're familiar with major arcana by number, then you'll be fine. The suits are renamed water, earth, fire, and air. And the court cards are titled in Spanish, and they are associated with different individual figures. So you'll see when I flip through the cards, the individual figures that kind of inspire each one or that each one is associated with are not named on the cards themselves. So this is kind of a layer that you could choose to read with or not. But the guidebook associates each of the court cards with a particular individual. So for example, La Poeta del Fuego, the poet of fire, which would be the Page of Wands, is associated with Octavia Butler. And the La Guerrera del Fuego, the warrior of fire, associated with Arundhati Roy. And it goes on. There's well-known names here. Vandana Shiva, Naomi Klein, Winona LaDuke, and so on. So you'll see from the cards that this isn't obvious visually, but it's there, and there's explanations of why each one was paired the way that it was. The backs of the cards look like this. They are technically not quite reversible, but they are so close that I think you would never notice that they are not reversible, and there are reversed meanings for each of the cards provided. The people depicted in the deck are all depicted in silhouette, and I'm not sure how well this will pick up on camera, but I'm sure given the nature of the original materials that this deck was made with, this is not plain white. It is very much textured, like that original paper. The cardstock is matte. I don't know what deck I would compare this to in terms of cardstock, but it's nice. It shuffles nicely. It's not sticky. It's not too thick. It doesn't feel flimsy. It's a nice bendy cardstock. So for the Fool, we have the Artist, the Engineer for the Magician, the Healer for the High Priestess, the Gardener for the Empress, the World Leader for the Emperor. I probably don't need to tell you what each one is. The Teacher. You can see the teaching rocks back here. The Lovers. The Bicycle. And each of the guidebook entries is really ecologically specifically focused. Like, they're not generic tarot keywords at all. They're very deck specific. Justice. So Justice is at 8 in this deck. The Lone Wolf for the Hermit, and they are kind of wearing a cape. And I feel like this, the lone wolf, in an ecological context, I feel like the lone wolf could be like a saboteur, but could also be focused on kind of individual ecological life changes and things like that as well. The Life Cycle. Strength at 11. The Hanging Woman. I will say, I find that with these silhouetted cards, the figures all read really neutrally to me in terms of gendering and things like this. The titles are not all gender neutral in this deck, but I think the art does feel quite gender neutral to me. Extinction. I like this skeleton there. The Geneticist for Temperance. This one is challenging, I think. the profiteer for the devil. The superstorm. The stars. The moon. I really like this moon. Normally I don't like if there's kind of human figures in the moon, but this I quite like. The sun. Transcendence instead of judgment. And the multiverse for the world. Now, as mentioned, the minors are elementally named, and I guess they're pips. They're sort of pips. You'll see what I mean. They are, I don't know, quantitative or volume distinguished, we'll say. So the Ace of Water. And then from there, they're just numbered. So we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 of water. And in terms of what you get in the guidebook for these minor cards, they do, like, the minors feel really similar, right? Visually speaking. You do, however, get a fair amount in terms of distinguishing them in the guidebook. So for the water suit, the guidebook specifies that the water cards relate to all aspects of water, droughts, floods, the rise of sea levels, water quality, groundwater, water management systems, dams, wastewater plants. Similar to the cup suit in the traditional tarot, they can also be associated with the emotions. And then for each card, you get quite specific meanings. So for example, twos are related to balance, partnerships, mutuality, the balance of ocean water. For example, underoxygenated or ocean acidification is affected, seeking balance. 4 of water. 4 is a card of stability. Think of a 4-legged table or 4-legged animals. 4 can be related to tradition. Groundwater depletion and contamination means a foundation or life structure is disturbed. Relation to water needs to be rethought in order to gain stability. And the guidebook really covers a lot of areas of environmental change, environmental catastrophe, environmental activism. So throughout the description of the different cards, you get very clear references. Extreme precipitation, water management being privatized, environmental racism, carbon sinks, like very, very specific meanings, though the minors, in terms of their depictions, do not get at that level of specificity. The court cards, as mentioned, the titles are in Spanish and are all silhouetted figures. So we have La Poeta for the page, which is the poet, La Guerrera for the knight, which is a warrior, La Guía as guide for what would I assume be the queen, and the Jefa like a leader or boss. I looked up translations, I don't speak Spanish, for what would be the king. And so again, you can see that, the silhouettes are not made to look like the people in the guidebook, really, that the cards are associated with, but each one does have a figure that you can associate with if you want to. The earth suit is crystal structures. I like the brown color for earth. And I really like the color palette in this deck in terms of the natural pigments that the artist used. I think they come through really beautifully. So we have the quartz for the earth suit. The air suit is these windmills. And again, for each suit, they tell you in the guidebook what it's associated with. So the earth one has to do with, of course, like soil and soil systems and things that live in the soil and, related topics. The air has to do with air quality, things that are airborne, airborne illness, and so on. And so these are the kinds of meanings that you get in the little guidebook related to the air, but with a kind of numerological slant, I would say, in terms of the meanings that are given. The guides all have hats on. These are all seated. Then we have the fire suit. I do think having more variety in the minors would have been good, but laying these out in a big spread, you really get a sense of kind of the volume or amount of the different elements visually in a really interesting way. Though I do think that maybe more difference would be nice. Okay. So that is the Eco Tarot by Adrienne Jenek. Maybe I'll give it a shuffle. It has a really nice color to it. Like it's not the stark bright white of a lot of new decks with the basis and the natural pigments and paper. It's a good shuffle. And it overhands as well. And as I understand it, people actually modeled for the cards. So it makes a really nice visual, I think. So for someone who reads kind of numerologically, I think that this could be, like I wouldn't call this a pip deck insofar as the pips are not distinguished all the time, but to me, this is a pip deck functionally speaking. And I will just finish by sharing a reading. As I mentioned, there's a number of spreads in here provided. A 1-card spread, a 5-card spread. Is it a spread if it's 1 card? I don't know. Maybe. That's the Challenger Spirit of the Day. So something interesting given is a 2-card spread. In the 2-card spread, you shuffle the cards and divide into 2 piles that do not need to be even. From the left pile, you choose a minor, in terms of a pip, like 1 to 10, to represent something happening as it relates to climate change in one's own lifetime. You kind of go through until you find a minor, and then in the second pile, you pick a major or court representing a role for the seeker, or like yourself if you're reading for yourself. A role for them, a value they can foster, or a helper to assist in navigating something indicated in the first card. And then there's suggestions for reversals. So I will do that reading for myself with a few more shuffles. So I'll put into 2 piles. From the first pile, I need a minor arcana, and I'm just going to choose the first one that comes up. Of course, it's going to... Okay, here we go. 8 of water. And from the second one, I need a court card or a major. Now we'll probably get a bunch of minors here because it's the opposite of what we're looking for. It doesn't say what to do if there is. Okay, there we go. Water. Water cards everywhere. Okay. I have an 8 of water and the guide of water. So the first card has to do with something happening in my lifetime. Okay, so the 8 of water in this guidebook talks about the impacts of leaders and leadership and extreme precipitation that's causing flooding and king tides with more frequency that cannot be ignored. So leadership, precipitation, flooding. And this one, the guide, the courts are separate in the guidebook. So for each of the courts, there's a section that explains the kind of overall kind of level of the court. So it explains that Las Guias are related to the queens in traditional tarot. They represent visionary, iconoclastic leaders, forgers of new pathways. These are active leaders who are not waiting to see who or how many are following them. They're like a scout who finds a way forward and reveals that way to others. That's the general description. And there's quotes. There's quotes related to each of the court cards. So the person who's associated with the court card there's a quote from that person. And the person associated with this card is Eleanor Ostrom, who lived 1933 to 2012. Eleanor Claire Lynn Ostrom was an American political economist who dedicated her life to scholarly work investigating how communities succeed or fail at managing finite common pool resources such as grazing land, forests, and irrigation waters. To date, to the date of the publication of this deck, the only woman to win the Nobel Prize in economics. It goes on to discuss her work countering the theory of the tragedy of the commons, and which it explains, and her work documenting effective examples of governing the commons in different places all over the world. And the quote is, "There is no reason to believe that bureaucrats and politicians, no matter how well-meaning, are better at solving problems than the people on the spot who have the strongest incentive to get the solution right." So to me, that this reading would then invite me to think on a kind of local scale and think about what I can do in a positive way with other folks, working collectively, And the 8 has to do with the impacts of leaders or leadership as well, which is interesting. And this one talks about the importance of kind of not assuming that the powers that be are going to, you know, solve the problem that the status quo system caused, that capitalism has caused and colonialism has caused, and so on. So that's an interesting 2-card spread. And of course, you could do a reading like this with any deck. You could separate it like this and do this reading, but the guidebook has a lot of really specific things related specifically to climate and environmental activism, which is an interesting thing to explore. So that is the Eco Tarot by Adrienne Jenick. Have you seen this deck? Have you worked with this deck? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you again soon.